And Kristen, if you're ready, I think we can. We have a quorum and we have a few minutes past the hour. So
I am ready. Thank you.
all righty, well, we'll get this going then. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Johnson. I'm the chair of this committee, and I call this regular meeting of the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee to order. We're conducting this meeting via teleconference and is being recorded. The agenda for this meeting is on the city's website at www.santa-ana.org. And members of the public will have an opportunity to address the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee regarding agenda and also non-agenda type items during the public comment section of the meeting. And even though we are not meeting physically, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And I appreciate the chief having a flag in the background. And so we can all do the proper respect. All right, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And staff, if you could please call the roll.
Member Hernandez? Absent. Member Lewis?
Present.
Member Cargosian is excused. Member Lugo is excused. Member Pereira?
Present.
Vice Chair Landaverde?
Here.
Chair Johnson?
Yep, I'm here.
We have a quorum.
All right, excellent. And this is the time for public comments on the agenda and non-agenda type items. Kristen, do we have any members of the public that would like to speak at this time?
We do not.
All right, excellent. And our next item is item number 1, which is the consent calendar approval of the minutes from our December 8th, 2021 meeting. And do we have any members that would like to edit that, or are we able to take a vote? If they're not seeing any edits, do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
And I'll second.
Excellent, thank you, Member Lewis and Landaverde. Staff, if you could call the roll, please.
Member Lewis?
Aye.
Member Pereira?
Aye.
Vice Chair Landaverde?
Aye.
Chair Johnson?
Yes, for me also.
Motion passes.
Excellent. All right. Well, our next item is item number 2, which is a police department presentation, and specifically as it relates to Measure X impact on their police operations and services to the public. Kristen, if you want to introduce who our distinguished guests are this evening.
First, I just want to make sure that everybody can see the presentation. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm sorry. With the Santa Ana PD, we have Vice Captain Rodriguez and Chief Valentin.
Yes, good evening. I'm Robert Rodriguez. I'm the Assistant Chief of the Santa Ana Police Department. I will be presenting the Measure X impact on police services this evening on behalf of Chief David Valentin. Next slide, please.
Hey, Robert, before you get going,
Yes.
Kat, is there any way you can expand the presentation to, so we don't have the border of, your header on, so that it's just the.
I would love to, but that's a no can do because we only received it in PDF format. I did not get the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, Kristen? Same?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so Measure X, it was voted into, approved by voters in November of 2018, and it was implemented in April 1st of 2019. The purpose of Measure X on the PD was to maintain effective 911 response retaining firefighters and police officers, addressing homelessness, fixing streets, maintaining parks, youth and senior services, and unrestricted general revenue purposes. So the two metrics were reduced response times and improved police officer hiring and retention. Next slide. So the Santa Ana Police Department has different response times for different types of priority calls. We have 5 priority calls. Priority 1, our immediate threat to life exists. An example of that is a crime in progress, such as a domestic violence or assault with a deadly weapon with a firearm. A priority 2 threatens the safety of citizens, or our serious crimes are in progress or have just occurred and are urgent in nature. An example of a priority 2 could be also a robbery that just occurred, but the suspect is no longer present at the location, but may still be in the area. So priority 1s and 2s are dispatched immediately to any available unit. There are instances where no units are available, and the dispatcher has to work to clear units from other calls before the incident can be dispatched. Next slide, please. So continuing with the response times, priority 3s are non-life threatening, but are urgent in nature. For example, shoplifting at a supermarket or at the mall where the suspect's already in custody, or a silent alarm, burglary alarm, or loitering of unhoused personnel. Priority 4 are routine incidents that are non-life threatening, but require a timely police response. Those are burglary reports. Usually they're late burglary reports where the victim didn't discover the burglary until several days later. Priority 5 are non-urgent and administrative in nature. And the most common one we see on these are parking problems or patrol checks or stray animals. Next slide, please. So looking at our response times from when it was implemented, Measure X, to where we're at now at the end of 2021, there's been a 28% decrease in our response times. We went from 2019 at 7.46 minutes to 5.31 minutes. From priority 2, 3, 4, and 5, there was also a decrease, and our priority 5 also significantly decreased by 31%, as you can see on the graph. Next slide. So this slide covers the police officer hires in 2021 and how many were separated in 2021. So in 2021, we hired 22 police officers and separated 28. That gave us a net of -6. Year to date, we've hired 5 and separated 2, which gave us a positive of 3. So based on 2021 and year to date, that would be a -3 net of officers. Next slide. If you look at the next slide is a historical perspective on our hirings and separations.
I'm sorry. We have someone in the waiting room that I'm getting a message on my side. Kristen, are you able to see that, or do you want me to admit?
I just let him in.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
No worries. So moving along, this slide here gives a historical perspective. Looking at 2016 to 2018, that was prior to Measure X, and that shows how many we hired and how many were separated and gives us our net. Our average before Measure X, in regards to police officers, we ended up netting five officers, or 5.6. After Measure X was implemented, which was in 2019, that's when we hired 50 police officers. Our net was overall from 2019 to just 2021, not including 2022, that gave us 14.4.5 officers, 14.6 officers net. If you include the 2022 year to date, that gives us 11.75%, or 11.75 officers, or almost 12 officers of year to date. So obviously after Measure X was implemented, we netted more officers than we did prior to Measure X. Next slide. As you can see from the previous slides, after Measure X, our response times were improved, and also our hiring and retention also improved significantly. I'm open for any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm sorry, what was it, Sergeant?
Assistant Chief.
Assistant Chief. All right. Excellent. Awesome. Thanks, Assistant Chief. So as we've done in the past, when we have someone join kind of mid presentation and they've missed the opportunity to be able to for public comments, I want to stay consistent since this is a small group and relatively low attendance, to make sure that if anyone from the public would like to make a public comment at this point, to be able to extend that to the person who joined. I'm not sure, Kristen, if there's a way that you can let them know what they need to do if they want to make that comment.
It looks like they're having difficulty joining, Tim. I've yet to see them successfully enter.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. If they do enter, and I'll extend that courtesy to them also, as long as it's not too distracting down the road.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and open up to our comments and questions from our group here. So I'm going to go with how I see on my screen here, which so Member Perea, do you have any questions or comments for either a chief or assistant chief or what have you?
No comments at the moment. Can you come back to me after?
Okay, excellent. And how about Member Lewis for yourself?
Hey, no comments at this time. I just want to congratulate them on reducing the response times. Very impressive.
Thank you.
All right, Member Landaverde, or Vice Chair Landaverde.
Well, thank you for the presentation. This is obviously very helpful because we get to see the trend that you guys have, that we asked for when we first started Measure X. I guess my question is maybe this is just me, but what does separated mean? Is that just that they left or is that just what it is?
Yes, separate can mean that they retired,
Okay.
or they left for medical reasons or whatever the case may be.
Okay. And then if I know this is kind of far down the road, but when Measure X does eventually, fall out, do you guys think that this can still stay consistent, or do you guys see that Measure X is just such a beneficial thing to your response time?
I say with our numbers increasing back to where they were several years ago, it definitely improves our response time because we have more officers available for calls for service. Currently, we are still short-staffed, not short-staffed, but vacant police officer positions that we still need to fill. I can get you an exact number here in a bit.
Okay.
But once we fill those numbers to capacity, our response time should continue to increase, along with our retention, and also for newer officers.
Awesome. Okay. I mean, when you get that number, no rush, just was wondering
14.
and to your thoughts.
14. It's 14.
Okay. Okay.
All right, excellent. And so I do see another square on my screen. So at this point, if Mr. Ramirez would like to make a comment, this would be the time to do that. We've already passed the public comment period, but as a courtesy, if a member of the public wants to do that, now would be a good time. And that you're still on mute if you wanted to do that, Mr. Ramirez.
I don't see him unmuting himself or raising his hand.
It sounds good. Well, I'm going to have some questions, like always, which is halfway, which I think Member Lewis and Perea kind of pass on to me. So I'll ask their questions. And one of those questions, definitely, Assistant Sergeant or Assistant Chief, is the number of vacancies, and specifically, and this might be maybe more for Kat, the number of budgeted. So I guess that would be, I think the term is funded yet unfilled positions.
Yes. We actually, sworn positions, we actually have 376 funded. That means budgeted. And there are 8 that are authorized but not funded, for a total of 384 authorized positions.
And how many of those is that number 14 that we essentially are still looking to net hire then? Is that?
Yes, and I just want to make sure that the committee understands that 14, it's a snapshot in time. So for instance, maybe in August, it was 18 and maybe we added a few, and maybe next month it might be 11. That's going to fluctuate month to month. So that's a snapshot in time.
Yeah, point taken for sure. Assistant Chief, do most of the separations, are they, a lot of times, especially if it's a retirement, separations will all occur kind of at the same time, like, either in January or December would kind of be the norm. I would think, is that true with the police force also, that kind of like normal retirements are grouped together?
Not necessarily. Usually retirements, especially the personnel that are retiring now, are still on the 3% at 50. So it's usually dependent on the employee's birth date when they turn 50. There's other external factors as whether they plan to retire exactly at 50 or they move out of state for another job opportunity at 50. But it's sporadically spread throughout the year.
Okay, good to know. So where I was trying to figure out, okay, like the 2021 net negative, is that because most people retire in December, for example, and are we going to always kind of have that negative, but it sounds like it's more rotational based on birth dates, which is obviously spread out throughout the year and other factors.
Correct.
Perfect. One of the your priority calls. So one of those is so focusing. I'm going to have a question about priority 3 and then priority 5, and kind of related to one another. But your priority 3 with homeless transient type issues. One of the things that I think the council has recently funded is adding some outside social, like sitting at social help, especially trained folks. Is that expected to really improve some of that response time, or maybe even it could even decrease it, depending on their if it's a call that PD has to go on and you have to wait for sitting net, which may not be as available as maybe your officers. Is there an expected change on that, especially with the recent sitting net type contract?
So there is a sitting net contract, and there's also the SMART team, which already has been put into effect, and that should impact how many calls for service regarding transients as far as priority 3s go, or 4s. But just because we get a transient call, it could also be a priority 1. So just because it's a transient related type radio call doesn't necessarily specify that it's a priority 3, but those should increase or at least minimize our frequency of our homeless calls. But it's also dependent of our overall calls for service for all types of service. So I do have some numbers for priority 3 homeless calls for 2021, and it was 15,821 priority calls. That was just priority 3. Non-homeless calls was 37,979. That was 29% of our, almost 30%, 29.4 of our calls for service in priority 3 were unhoused personnel or transient calls. At the previous data in 2019 through October of 2020, the priority call for homeless as far as priority 3 was 29.2. So there wasn't really much of a significant change from 2019 to 2020, and then from 21 for the entire year of 21. But the SMART team and CityNet, that just got implemented this year, later part of 2021. So we should expect to see a decrease.
A decrease in number of calls or a decrease in response time?
And a decrease in number of calls. Like I said, the response times are other factors are considered. If we have other robberies or burglaries, I mean, that are priority threes, that will also impact our response times.
Okay.
But also our number of officers on the street.
All right, excellent. And I mean, I obviously, there's multiple different ways to handle that specific issue, and I would, just encourage and continue to encourage, and hopefully others support this at the city level. It seems like they are. That the more that we can get professionally trained folks to, handle that day to day, then it allows your trained folks to be able to focus on what they need to do also. Which will improve then other priority calls, right?
Yes.
Both up and down from three on that. And well, actually, one more question kind of related to the unhoused population. Does the PD have any specific specifically trained mental health professionals on specifically with PD, or is that all outsourced to the CityNet and some of the smart type? I mean, I'm assuming your folks get some training, but specifically like that's what they're there for on the PD payroll.
We do have the quality of life team, but those are officers and they work in collaboration with CityNet. So it's a collaborative response with CityNet if the smart team needs them. But it's our core team, which is our quality of life team, that does respond. So they do get more training than the average police officer out on patrol responding calls for service. So they're more focused in the area of unhoused personnel or those types of services.
Okay. So, but they would still be officers first and then trained secondarily with those types of services, as opposed to someone that might be a mental health professional that then is, maybe with, on the PD team also.
You're correct. That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. And then in terms of priority 5 type stuff, which is our lowest response type thing, obviously if we free up, I'm assuming that there's quite a few of those too, hearing 37,000 or 15,000, whatever the number was for priority 3. For priority 5, a massive amount of resources being utilized for priority 5. And so if we're able to, reduce the consumption of your services for priority 5 to be able to allow on, more urgent matters, are there efforts similar to what's happening on the homeless front to where, there might be some ability to for other, other folks that may not need to be a police officer respond to some of those types of items? If I recall correctly, I was seeing, some parking and some, animal issues and some of those types of things, which I wouldn't assume, although parking is obviously a heavy issue in our city, so sometimes it might escalate a little bit. But are there areas that we're able to essentially do the same thing with homelessness, to where we're outsourcing some of that to a more appropriate level?
Yes, and we do currently have parking control officers, and we do have animal control. Unfortunately, those are not 24-hour operations. So when we get a priority 5 call related to traffic, let's say at 1:30 in the morning, that would probably a call for service will still be put in for a police officer. And going back to priority 5 and unhoused personnel, we had only 60 priority 5s for the year of 2021. So priority 5, meaning it's the least risk to life or the least priority. We do expect to see hopefully those to go down with CityNet and the SMART team, because those are something that would not necessarily always need a police officer response. However, like I said, we are the only 24-hour operation. So if those calls do come in at odd hours of the morning, they still get dispatched to a police officer.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple more questions, which I'm always known for in this group. So just bear with me if you would. in terms of your staffing level, I know that Kat went over the 376 to 384. What should us like, statistically, I'm sure that you guys, like many departments, are very data oriented. What, like a city our size, what would what's kind of the average of a city our size in terms of number of officers that we should have? Either I imagine that's probably either a per capita or per square mile. I would imagine they're probably the most common metrics. Is that something that you guys keep any data on?
Yes, usually there's a per capita, and that's the model that's used. And I believe we're, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, at 1.7 or somewhere around there per capita, which is below the national average or the recommended average per capita. I can actually look that up right now.
Yeah, let me just add here, and by the way, I think Assistant Chief Rodriguez is doing a phenomenal job. So it's a great question. There is the Western states average of deployment per 1,000. And so we're talking California, Nevada, Oregon, all the Western states of the country. And that averages to about 1.8 per 1,000, 1.8 per 1,000. So if you take that number, right, and strictly, mathematical equation here, and you apply that to our 340,000 residents here, it gets you in the area of about 612 officers. Okay, 612 officers. And so now, mind you, some of the states that are included, they're not as densely populated. They're spread across a large geographical area, but nonetheless, you see kind of the difference where we fall compared to that average. We currently, and the Assistant Chief can verify, but we're at about, last time I looked at this, we're at about 1.1 per 1,000, roughly. When we first started, just pre-Measure X, we were facing some 67 police officer vacancies, 14+% of the total sworn approved staff weren't here. And so our numbers were under 300. So we were making miracles happen every day, essentially. So we are very strategic in where we place our resources, and we're very transparent with that. Our number one priority is to have availability of officers to respond to emergency calls for service, that 911 life, death, situation. And so we build the police department based on patrol operations as our core function. And then we support around that platform. So detectives, administration, training is a key component of what we do here when we consider our best practices in de-escalation, right? Our website is up and current with data points that the public, enjoy getting access to. They get a good snapshot of where we put our resources and what our priorities are. You also have a 5-year strategic plan that complements the city's overall strategic plan within the police department. That's a 2019 to 2024. I can go on, but I hope to answer your question.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot. So to where it sounds like we're, obviously averages are only where the best of the worst meets the worst of the best. And every city is different, with us being highly densely populated, that might skew a little bit different. But it sounds to me like we're nowhere near what we would maybe ideally be at. Is that, or, even though we're maybe moving in the right direction, would you agree with that, Chief?
I would. And it really comes down to, what is the community's expectation level in terms of, response, right? And so, even the city of Los Angeles with its, 700 vacancies of a 10,000 officer police department authorized, they're at a higher ratio per resident. They're, I think, 1.4 in that general area. And so if we're at 1.1, you kind of see that we are maximizing all of our resources. And at the same time, you see a continuum of lowering the response times, which is a key measure. And we're not able to do that unless we have the personnel to do that with.
So and I think I asked this question last time your group was so kind to come and speak to us, but do y'all have an actual goal for these response times to where you're, from a year over year basis and maybe even a 5-year goal to where, what should, we're seeing it go in the right direction, but how do you know when you're actually achieving what you want to achieve?
Well, that's a bit of a tough one. And I look at this from not just from our city, but across the country. It's, we want to provide services as quickly as possible, particularly when we're talking about emergency. So it's, you can apply the same question to crime. Where should the ceiling be? Well, there should be no crime. Now, are we, if we set that expectation for next month, are we going to achieve that? I'm not so sure about that. So when it comes to response times, we look at other cities with like size, populations, but again, you have to also overlay. So for example, we get compared a lot to the city of Anaheim. I don't know why we're much better, but in any event, the point is they have some 57 or 58 square miles, right? By the time you include the east side, right? Was Anaheim Hills. So those factors come into play. So an ideal, that's there is the ability, with a funded staffing study that different universities engage in. And they can look at different factors such as, community satisfaction, response times. How much time do our officers have when they're not going from call to call to call? Those are all variables that you can put into an equation, and you got to have community input with something like this because the community is the ones that are being served. And then what comes out on the other end. And I would say, and all the professors that work on this, it's a mathematical equation. It's subject to, flexibility, because if Tim, you call and I'm choking right now and I need help, 5 minutes is an eternity, right? Is an eternity. Right. I will tell you that a priority 1 response time in the low 5s is quite good, particularly, for the amount of people that we have in our 27 square miles, right? When you consider traffic. Now that the pandemic, is starting to settle down a bit, then you got more people out on the roadway, a lot more people walking, biking, traveling in vehicles, et cetera. So, but, low 5 for a priority 1, that's a pretty good. Can we be better? Can we do better? Always. We can always do better. So I hate to sound like an attorney. It all depends.
Well, I live in the all depends world also on my day to day. Yeah. But, and I appreciate the overall commentary, because you knocked off about 3 of my other questions in there also. So I appreciate the the well-rounded answers on that. I think I'm going to ask one more question. It's kind of unrelated to all this, but just a suggestion since I have an audience. Is there any way that when the helicopters are up there talking to us, can we put that out, what they're saying on social media, on a website, on something, so we can actually know what they're saying? And I know they're not all your helicopters, by the way, so.
Yeah, so and then I'm going to shut up because I want to turn this back over to Assistant Chief Rodriguez. He's doing a great job. You know, we have a lot of stuff going on sometimes, right? And the announcements that you hear are sometimes having to do with missing persons and people that walk away from their, you know,
Yep.
from their home or their, you know, beginning stages of dementia, et cetera. And we find that is an effective tool. And if they hear their name, they look at, see what they're wearing, and they hear that description, there's oftentimes success there. And I get it. Would it be nice to have a quick snippet? You know, I have a social media coordinator that I implemented with the approval of the city council about 2 years ago now. And I would need like a team of 10 of her. She's phenomenal. She's a millennial, you know, a youngster like all of you. But the point is, we've tried that. I've got a new public information officer. She's high energy as well. And she's getting a lot more proactive with messaging. So it's something we can work on.
Well, fair enough. Let's just keep it on that probably ever growing to-do list there for you. Assistant Chief Rodriguez, did you want to add anything to any of my questions that the chief was answering? If not, then we'll go back to Member Perea.
I think the chief covered everything. The only thing I did find was the officers per capita. Back when we had 310 officers, it was 9.2, which is 0.9 because they did per 10,000. We're probably about 372 or 370, somewhere around there. So it keeps us exactly what the chief said, at 1.1 or at 1 per 1,000.
Okay. Member Perea, you got the floor.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you, Assistant Chief and Chief Valentin for coming to the meeting. Appreciate all this information. I'm pretty sure a lot of our residents have a lot of these questions. You know, where money goes and how is the police using it. So I appreciate this information. So my first question is around overtime pay hours. Not sure how you track that. What are the percentages or the hours or the amounts of overtime that has been allocated over the last 3 years since Measure X has started for police officers?
In regards to overtime, I don't have those numbers readily accessible, but I can definitely get those numbers. I do know that for overtime, a lot of it's also dependent on unplanned events that one cannot plan for regardless of staffing, like major incidents, whether it's civil unrest, whether it's major events in the city. That's definitely always going to impact our overtime, and it's always that unknown variable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I can definitely get back to you on those numbers.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I know the second question is going to be hard to answer given that you need to look at the numbers, but it's more about do you have a sense that the after Measure X overtime has gone up or down, you know, considering, you know, those major events that are unforeseen, or is that something that you cannot measure yet?
Right now, with not having the numbers in front of me, it'd be very difficult to answer in regards to if the overtime's actually gone down, especially when we had some very volatile years in 2019. I'm not 2019, 2020, and 2021 with the pandemic and COVID and the civil unrest. Those were very major significant years that impacted our overtime rates. I think going into 2021, we should be able to get a better metric to see where our overtime's at for our 2022.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's fair. Definitely 2020, the last couple of years have been very different than others. I think that one of the reasons why I'm asking, you know, as more police officers are being hired, and I think one of the concerns from residents, you know, over the years is, you know, how much overtime it gets allocated for police versus how much can we be more efficient and hire more officers to offset, you know, some of that overtime. And so I think those are some of the questions that perhaps we might not have the full data until a couple of years down the road when we can actually compare regular years to regular years versus, you know, this rare worldwide events. My second question, it goes more into crime rate or crime percentage, do you have data over the last 3 years per year about crime rates in general, but also violent crimes specifically? And have you seen a trend shifting upwards or downwards?
In regards to crime rates, I do have the our homicide data that is published. I'm not sure if this is the homicide data is published, but there was a recent public service announcement that our PIO put out regarding our homicide data, and we do have an increase in homicides from not an increase, but starting year to date, we did have an increase in homicides in the first 2 months, which we then added additional resources to ensure that a lot of those homicides were solved. I believe it was at a 70% rate, which is higher than the average for homicide rates to be solved. And we added some additional resources in some areas where some of these violent crimes were occurring.
Go ahead, Chief.
I don't know how to use that. It's been 2 years. Listen, I'll get around to it. But in any event, if I could, Assistant Chief, if I could just jump in just for a sec. So on our website, see, this is how inept I am technologically. So this here is a 2-page, right? A 2-page year-end review. If you go to our PD website, Chris, there you go. Boy, you're a blessing. Okay, so if you look at this here, for the last, because you Carlos, you talked about 3 years, and you'll find there, this is just like a 50,000-foot level overview of some outcomes, from the police department. So we just posted the 2021. It usually runs in a couple of months, in the rear, but 2020 and 2019 are on there as well. And so you see the different kind of focus areas. This 2021 on page 2 at the top here that you're looking at, it does include an increase in homicides, but we also provide, what has been the response. And so the part of the response is, traditional policing is targeting gang members, career criminals, and targeting the removal of guns off the streets. The premises for every gun, particularly illegally, owned guns, unserialized, ghost guns that are printed on 3D printers, all those efforts, for every one that we remove, the premises that we've likely have saved a life, a shooting or worse, murder. And so you see the increases there. This increase that we're currently experiencing, we put out the public service announcement. My PIO put that together, and she did a great job. And we broke down the numbers because there was this, this kind of alarmist messaging that the picture that the police department is painting is not accurate. Well, we very much acknowledge what the data is, and then we break down the data. Downtown Santa Ana, we had this subculture that sprung up. It may be a displacement of, say, for example, the closing of Original Mike's. They take over some basement locations downtown, and 2 of those 4 murders were gang related, involving gangs from outside of Orange County, outside of the city of Santa Ana, but we're talking deep Los Angeles, Long Beach, and even after we closed that place down and put various efforts in place, there was social media postings that they wanted to have, additional events in this building. So that's just some of the measures on this document as well. And then I'll shut up again, is, focus areas of alternative police response. And so I think Tim or someone else was mentioning, teaming up nonprofit providers such as CityNet and others with police officers and assessing which calls require police response, and many do not. And so that's a priority set by the city council that we carried out. Of course, community engagement has continued and actually increased. We had to, even though I'm not an IT person, I have great people that work on that, and they came up with smaller pocketed events to engage the community during the pandemic, which were successful. And so we were able to continue to carry out those efforts. And what else we have? Recruitment, skill retention, diversity, inclusion. All of my staff, work hard to share information via social media platforms on, who is it that we're bringing into our organization, right? And being inclusive of not just diversity and ethnicities, gender, backgrounds. We just hired our first Iranian-born gentleman as a police officer. Wonderful family. Got to meet the whole family. They're just overjoyed to be here, specifically in Santa Ana. Anyways, I can go on all night. I'll shut up. Assistant Chief, it's back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that, especially also the response and the communication around the incidents that took place in downtown, and important to also highlight, who the crime was committed by, and it's important to highlight there's folks not from the city, but also folks that are coming from outside of the city. I have just two more questions, and then I'll give it back to you, Chairman Johnson. The other one is, so for 2019, and you might have mentioned it, I might have missed it. So there was a huge, a significant amount of officer hires compared to the other years that you presented there. I believe it was 40 officers plus. Is that a direct correlation to dollars that came from Measure X, or is that something that was, were those hiring plan, or is that correlated?
I think there is a relationship or correlation between the Measure X dollars, and it was also a rebranding and resetting our department and putting ourselves out there, marking ourselves to be able to recruit new officers, like the chief mentioned, not just from all around, but also from within the city, from within our own community, which we have a significant amount of officers that are actually born and raised here within the community of Santa Ana. So in short, yes, I think there's a relationship or correlation between Measure X dollars and the ability to hire 50 officers in 1 year, which I don't know if there's any other agency who has done that, accomplished that goal in 1 year.
And specifically, Member Perea, Measure X money was used to hire a dedicated human resource analyst, like a recruiter, if you will, for the police department. So that resource was added. And then in addition, the Measure X was used to make sure that the wages and benefits for police officers remains very competitive, which also helps with the hiring. So those are your two tie-ins for your direct correlation of Measure X dollars.
Thank you, Director Downs. My last question is nothing related to do with Measure X or this one, but it's more related to the Chief Valentin, to the policy that you publish around police officers using the flashlights on moving vehicles. On that, have you received additional complaints? I know that one of the reasons one of the reasons why you did that policy or procedural internal department change was because residents were complaining about officers shining their lights. Have you received any other additional complaints after that policy, or has that been successfully implemented?
We haven't received. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's all you.
We haven't received since that was implemented, and just to separate the two, that was a directive. We published a directive, the chief's directive on spotlight flashlight, using the spotlight on moving vehicles. And since the implementation of that directive, we haven't received many more complaints or dissatisfied community members regarding the use of spotlights. I think overall we probably only received 2 or 3 that I can remember, and that's why we went with a directive to ensure that officers understood, because it's easier to quicker to implement a directive than to set a department policy in place, because it requires a lot of other moving parts.
Mhm. Thank you, and I appreciate Chief Valentin that directive was definitely very helpful. Those are all my questions for today.
All right, excellent.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have a couple follow-ups also, but I want to give the courtesy to Member Lewis and Linda Verde. Do either one of you have any questions that have come up through? No. All right. So a couple follow-ups here. So I mean, and I'm a CPA and accountant, so I live the kind of numbers daily. So when we currently have vacancies, okay, and you know, I mean, but at the same time, you know, we're short. Like not, you know, even if we had every single, you know, position filled, I'm kind of, again, I'm hearing that we'd want to hire more. Okay, so how do we, one, fill all those vacancies, so that way, you know, I presume then the next step would be, okay, now we want to improve even more. You know, can we get some more officers, or, you know, redeploy to certain different areas, or what have you, different. So what are we, you know, is the goal to get to no vacancies, or do you always want to have some vacancies in case you get the superstar police officer? I don't know if there's such a, you know, you always want to be able to hire the next best person that comes around. And if you're fully staffed, you can't, or, I mean, is there a reason why we're at, you know, we always seem to have, you know, vacancies?
I think the challenge with vacancies is always going to be retirements or separations, and unfortunately, not everyone always communicates. We have an estimate of who's going to retire at the end of the year, but we always get those anomalies or those unknowns that get a job offer after turning 50 and go double dip somewhere else, or just someone who decides to retire, or through medical reasons, they may also retire or have a change of career. So that's an unknown variable that we're always going to be faced with, that we can try to project and try to plan ahead. As we hire new police officers, it is a long process, because just because we hire a lot of police officers doesn't mean we don't vet them all. They have to go through a very thorough background. They have to complete a 6-month training academy. Then they got to complete a field training officer program. And we do hire some folks that shine through the hiring process. And in the middle of the academy, they may have a change of heart. But there are different variables that come into play that always leaves us with certain vacancies.
If I might add to that, across all local government, we have constant vacancies, and it really boils down to this. An employee could potentially give you a 2-week notice that they're leaving. But with civil service hiring rules, it takes months to bring in their replacement. So by its very nature, across all sectors of local government, you're still going to have that problem because of the civil service hiring rules. You will always have vacancies.
So what is the lead time? I'm hearing Assistant Chief Rodriguez say 6 months for, I mean, is that like, are you hiring like right now for like March next year? Or is it like, you know, November, October next year? Like what is your lead time that you're hiring?
So the fact that we have vacancies, we're always, well, not always, but we're always recruiting and hiring and putting people through backgrounds in anticipation of them, after they go through a background, which can be anywhere between 6 months of a background, 3 months of a background, to almost a year, and then a 6-month academy, and then a field training program to be a full police officer on their own out on the street. So we're continuously hiring, continuously recruiting in anticipation, as Director Downs explained, of those vacancies, to try to shorten that civil service process.
Okay. Excellent. And you know, one of the things that this group is, I think, acutely concerned about is our sunset of Measure X. And I mean, is there, do either of you have any commentary in terms of like, I mean, are we, what should we be expecting if we had a sunset, or when we have a sunset? And assuming that that sunset comes through, what does that mean to your department? If now, obviously, there could be different priorities in a few years and different, and so, I'm more speaking in generalities, not, hey, these number of costs, but what does that really mean to, especially the things that we just spoke about with response times and maybe, hirings? Are you, as people retire, we're just not, rehiring? Chief, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, I got the hand up. So it very simply stated, it has to do with services, right? So if we sunset and we have, this kind of bubble of vacancies in the area of, let's say, 10 to 15, and we're not able to continue to hire, then we have to go back to the drawing board, right? And look at our core of core services. And then we have to drop off things that are ideal to do. And certainly the nice to do things, those go by the wayside. That's just, and I think that's true in any industry, right? Or in your home budget, you look at, okay, what is our core of core? And then we look to build around that. In this case, if we get to a point where, we're continuing to hire, and the assistant chief is on point when he says that this is a continual process. We can, I argued vehemently with human resources at one point years ago that this needed to be open recruitment, ongoing, forever and a day until we get, and even if we got to zero, to answer your question specifically, Tim, we want to get to 0 vacancies. And even then, we know that we need additional services. We need additional, people to make this happen. So we would go back to the council and have that conversation. So it would be about services and what do we not do, right? I think we're blessed as an organization, as a city. I work very closely with a variety of different police chiefs, and many agencies struggle. They struggle in the area of recruitment and retention. And we today, fast forward today, we do not. It's a constant though. You're constantly investing in different strategies and being innovative. And the assistant chief mentioned recruitment locally here. We've gone into our own backyard. That's intentional. And so we're in a good situation. But we can't turn away from that and say, okay, we're good now. Let's stop. A hard stop. When you stop recruiting, you're 18 months to 2 years in the rear before you see a police officer by himself or herself in a black and white police car, because you have, the months long of processing, the 6 months academy, as was mentioned, 4 months with a training officer. There's an orientation period that goes on. So by the time you have that officer in the car by themselves, comfortable and well-trained to respond to your call for service, you're a year and a half plus down the road. And that's why we have to continually invest here.
And Chief, when does that person start or count as a hire? Meaning, like on the numbers that Director Downs was saying and Assistant
Yep.
Chief, when does that person start counting to those numbers of funded?
So
employees
from a budget
go
standpoint,
to the academy, or?
yeah, as soon as we hire them, as soon as they're on the books with the city as a police recruit, right? They're counted into our overall table of organization. But again, we don't see that recruit certainly here physically for the better of 7+ months. And then again, they go through this field training, and this is all mandated by state policy and regulation, the field training officer program and the basic academy, all requirements. There's no wiggle room here. And so we count them though the very first day as a police recruit because we're paying them to attend the police academy. And so they're tolling against our budget, right? So that's our start point.
So really those, I mean, those that big spike in 2019 of 50 hires, I mean, that really is an impact on like 20, well, probably even more so in 21 than in 19 and 20. I mean, because those are, I mean, they're not decreasing crime or decreasing response times when they're at the academy.
Here's your CPA hat, right? So you're absolutely right. So 50 hires, first of all, has not occurred in Santa Ana in over 20 years. And I can only say 20 years because that's as far back as we have data, okay? So at least 20 years, I can comfortably say we have not done this. And I don't know that any other agency in Orange County, aside from the sheriff of the county, who has some 2,000 deputies, no other agency has accomplished this. But you're absolutely right. When did we actually begin to see the impact of such a large hire group, right? You're probably looking at late 2020, maybe even early 2021, depending on the month when they were brought on board in 2019, right? The question about overtime, great question. The thesis there is what? The more officers you hire on straight time, right? And that was very much the premise that we presented to the city council. You should see over time a lowering of the overall overtime expenditure. But again, these are all 1 and 2+ years in the rear, right? We don't see the impact. And I think, Carlos, you mentioned it, that we're getting data points that go back. You have to go back a couple of years. And so same here, with this 50 hire in 2019, really out on the roadway comfortably, I'd say early 2021, right?
Yeah, and on the converse of that, meaning that, hey, the 28 that we lost in 21, I mean, those are experienced officers, I'm assuming. Maybe a couple of them are brand new. It's not right for them, but most of them are experienced officers that are helping those 50 get to where they need to be. So it's okay. So it's a constant wheel to where you need to be hiring for a year and a half, 18, 24 months out. And at the same time, trying to keep that separated number, lowering it. And to that point, is our police force, are we seeing a decrease in the average age of our force, or is it pretty consistent? Like, I would expect the older workforce we have, the more separations you're gonna have just in general. I think that would probably be and so are we seeing, and with these new hires, are we seeing that age come down to where hopefully our separations are not going to be as great in the future?
I would say that most of the new hires are younger,
okay,
right? They're all certainly in their early mid-20s. We do hire lateral police officers. I'm very, very selective, particularly on lateral officers. I don't want to hire someone else's problem. And so, but generally, to answer your question, that the age is on the younger side. And then those that are leaving, the vast majority of whatever number, 28 or whatever year you look at, they're certainly older folks. They're, of age to retire. And so those are the folks that are primarily leaving. There are some injuries and others that, it just isn't for them. I had a young lady who did phenomenal in the police academy, did phenomenal in the training program, everybody was just, wow. And halfway through her training program, she comes in and says, listen, I have nothing bad to say about Santa Ana PD. What an incredible opportunity, but I want to be a pastor full time. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. So we have those instances from time to time as well.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, well, I think I've exhausted all my questions, and we've gone well. Speaking of overtime, I'm sure that we've gone well over our time that we're expecting from you. But unless anyone else has any comments or questions for the group here, or for the chief and assistant chief, and seeing no one do the Chief Valentine hand wave. So I think we're we'll say much appreciated for everything you do for the residents and business owners and folks that come to our city just on a daily basis also. So thank you very much for all you do and being transparent and expansive on your questions and reading between the questions of what we're really asking. So I appreciate that. So, all right. Well, let me get back.
Thank you. I just found the hand.
What's that?
Good night. I said, I just found the hand on the thing over here on the right. It's the little hand that pops up. So anyways, all right, thank you.
Your big hand is a lot more noticeable. So I think that works out better.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Excellent. Thanks. All right. So sorry for all the questions, folks, but this is an important thing for me. I know for the residents also. So hopefully that was good. So our next item on the agenda is agenda item number 3 of the business calendar, which is going to be a Measure X revenue update, of which, boy, I see it, shame on me for not, we have a new square in our group here, and we didn't even recognize him. But maybe Kristen, if you want to introduce the speaker, I'm assuming that might be Trinity. So if not, my apologies, but go ahead.
Well, actually, I'll hop in.
Okay, there you go.
So Alex Trinidad is our new Assistant Director of Finance, and we're pleased to have him joining us for these meetings. He'll play a greater role as time moves forward. Alex is a CPA and very accomplished in his career, and yeah, we're very happy to have him here. But I am going to provide your Measure X revenue update this evening, and then I will turn it over to Alex for the next item, which is your expenditure update. So I know we do have a couple people, members of the public, so I will introduce myself. My name is Catherine Downs. I am the city's finance director, and good evening to you. So let's get going. On this next slide here, I have a complete history of Measure X receipts attributable to each quarter of business activity. We can see the initial effect of the pandemic that occurred in early 2020, as well as expected increases for the holiday shopping periods. Those occur in the fourth quarter of each year. Please note that there was not a notable increase for the 2021 fourth quarter shopping period when compared with the fourth quarters for 2019 and 2020. The graphic also includes a trend line for you, so you can see that. This is a summary of the annual Measure X revenue since fiscal year 1920. Our latest estimate of 79 million was provided by our sales tax consultant in mid-December. Our year-to-date actual receipts suggest that that estimate may increase again with our third quarter report scheduled for May 3rd. So I don't have a crystal ball out, but we just have some information here that suggests another increase of our estimate. This is the long-term revenue forecast for you. As a reminder, this will continue to evolve every single quarter with more data and actual results. We expect to get an update of this information in the next couple of weeks. But for now, the annual increase assumptions range from 3.4% for next year to 2.3% out in fiscal year 27-28. Based on this forecast, we may expect general fund revenue to decrease by as much as 32 million in 2029 when the Measure X rate decreases from 1.5% to 1%. I point that out because I know that the Oversight Committee is very aware of this future revenue decrease. So I wanted to provide a summarized reminder of what we're doing to prepare. We've segregated the accounting of expenditures funded with Measure X into separate accounting units for easier identification. We are making proposals to City Council to increase the portion of Measure X revenue used for one-time expenditures. We recently completed a pension debt refinancing that has the potential to allow expenditure reduction of as much as 18 million in 2029 and 36 million in 2039. Of course, that doesn't solve the entire problem. If we have a 32 million decrease in 2029, 18 million doesn't solve all that, but it certainly helps. And then, of course, maintaining a strong general fund reserve could help support a 2 to 3 year transition period to try to, rethink the budget. So those are the steps that we're taking to prepare for that future revenue decrease. And with that, I am happy to answer your question.
All right, folks. So we'll go through and ask any questions. I'm going to rotate a little bit because my squares have kind of changed around. Member Lewis, do you have any questions?
And then at this time, thanks for the report.
All right, excellent. And how about Member Perea?
No questions.
All right, and Co, or not, I keep wanting to call you Co, but I guess Vice Chair Linda Verde. You can be Co. I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, we want to keep it light here sometimes, right? You don't want to be too
Right.
serious because we already have so many things to talk about. There is, I guess, one question that I have, because I have a couple, but I think it might be answered when Tim, decides
Oh,
to.
no,
jump in,
don't,
so.
I don't have any on this one. You go for it.
Oh, you don't? No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, for the Measure X long-term forecast, is there a reason why, I guess, the annual increase is not like consistent? Like, why is it going down when, I guess, it falls off in 2029?
A good question. And the consultant has certain assumptions that we get to look at and, approve or not approve, agree with, not agree with. But those assumptions are more about a leveling out of the economy going forward. We can already see that inflation is creeping up. It may continue to creep up. We also know that the Fed is signaling its intention to continue increasing rates. So with all of those things, your rate of increase of spending that generates the taxable sales may start to slow down. So it's those kinds of assumptions looking out into the future that causes them to have a lesser percentage increase in future years.
Got it. So it could potentially, though, also change if something were to go.
Of course.
Because obviously,
Of course.
that's.
Oh,
Abby,
you have
you're on
yourself
mute.
back on mute.
I think you
Wow. I was like, I didn't even know when I did that.
slid
Okay.
across it.
Okay. Yeah. So then, yeah, that was, I don't even know how I mute myself. Where did I stop at? Did I answered your question or not? What did I? No, right. Sorry. I'm losing it over here. I think I paused myself when I was going to ask my next question. Is that what happened?
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's what it was. Okay. So I know you said for the what are we doing next to prepare, that last bullet for maintaining like a strong general fund. Is that something something we can do to help, or is that just like the city council prepares that, or how do we go about that?
Sure. So the city council has a policy. That policy is to maintain 18% of its annual budget in the general fund in reserve, and not 18% of every year, just 18% of the budget. So if the budget is 340 million, take 18% of that, which is 65 million, that's what they want to keep on hand. And that 65 million, not only do we have that, but right now we have an estimated 20 million in excess of that 65. So as long as we're maintaining that 18% reserve, and then it's even a bonus if we're actually able to maintain some available general fund balance above and beyond that, any money like that is going to help smooth the transition period. Decreasing the rate of government spending, I like to say, is almost like trying to turn an aircraft carrier. You need a long runway to do it because, rightly so. The residents are expecting a certain service level. They're used to certain things, and to try to make changes to what our residents get, that's difficult to do. Those are hard decisions to make, and they aren't made overnight. And then circling back to the reserve, the 18% reserve, that target was based on a risk analysis that we did that had a lot of factors in it. It's a best practices risk analysis that we think that 18% is about the right amount that we need to be in. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. And I think that's it that I have right now.
Excellent. Well, that was a good segue into my question, Director Downs, with regards to the reserves, because I think at the very beginning of this, we're in a very different situation, but there was some discussion or consideration of saying, hey, possibly that reserve is too high. The reserve policy, at least, maybe the reserve can never be too high, but the policy being too high. Did your group continue? And I think you were going to do a study or some sort of something on that to be able to recommend maybe a change to that. Did that happen, or did it get paused with everything going on, or
Yeah, it did happen. Previously, the reserve policy was set at 16.67% for operating reserve and then 1% for economic reserve. Between the two of them, 17.67%. So you think, okay, well, maybe I just combine them and round it up, and that's how I got the 18. But surprisingly, we did actually do a full-on risk analysis that did support an 18% level. So I went ahead and made a recommendation to have a single reserve amount. I felt like it was very confusing for the community to have two different numbers out there, an economic reserve and an operating reserve, especially with these weird calculations of like 16.67%. And I want things to be easy for the public to understand. But again, that 18% was very much based on a thorough risk assessment.
Okay, so that's different than it was like when this group started then.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate that. And then my follow-up to that, so we have a $20 million excess in our general, which is subject to, obviously if it's beyond the reserve policy, then council can use it for, if they wanted to, for general fund purposes or what have you. Do you see other cities having, in that situation, to where, especially if you see this one, projected sunset, to where it's really like you're almost like saying this is reserve for that sunset, meaning like, hey, we got to get ready for this. So we have, we have lots of hay in the barn. Let's go ahead and put it, save it for that sunset. So we're not in a situation like I think Westminster is in right now. Does that ever happen in city?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, no, I haven't necessarily seen that in other cities. The second part of your question, would I recommend at this time to, squirrel away even more in anticipation of the Measure X rate decrease? Maybe, maybe not. And here's why I say that. I think that, we do have a bit of time. I do like looking forward, but, this decrease is going to happen in 2029. That's 7 years off. And I think it is better, especially for the public conversation, if you will, to focus on one thing at a time. And so I tackled the reserve policy prior to pension debt refinancing. Then I tackled pension debt refinancing. That was part of the public conversation. And then, next we can move on to other items. So I feel like it needs to be this very methodical strategy, and, so that we get there. Again, turning that aircraft carrier, if you will. So very methodically taking step by step by step to get there at the time that we need it to have it done in 2029, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I appreciate the kind of the bucket approach that you're looking at, segregating and kind of, okay, let's tackle this by now that one. I just am always concerned about, I mean, it's one vote away from having, well, five yes votes, one vote away from someone saying, okay, let's use that 20 million for XYZ purpose, as opposed to, no, that really should be for the smoothing out period on the sunset. Because correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, Westminster is in, I mean, they had a sunset, a drop off, and they're going to be in a, I mean, it kind of seems like they're in a world of who knows what's happening.
Right.
But,
And this committee tonight, it's on your agenda to formulate your recommendations or your annual report to the city council. That's certainly something that you can recommend is to continue squirreling away even more money. So yeah, I can completely appreciate that.
okay. Well, yeah, you're anticipating my, that discussion. So, or I'm forecasting what I'm wanting to do on that, but.
And I might add that when we do have money in excess of the policy reserve, if the city council does signal that they want to do something with that, it is always our recommendation to use it for one-time items versus ratcheting up service levels and setting yourself up for even a bigger problem in the future.
Yeah, perfect. Does anyone else have any questions that may have come up from anything? Just wave your hands. All right, awesome. So is this when we go on to Alex?
Sure, and he's got the tough job tonight because the expenditure report is always harder than the revenue report. So I'll turn it over to him and I'll start my screen sharing.
All right. Thank you, Director Downs. So good evening, Chair Johnson and members of the committee. So I think it's the first time you're seeing me today. So, I'm the new assistant director here at the city. I've been here for just a little bit of background. I've been here with the city for 3 years now, and I work closely with our past assistant director, Sergio, on various projects. But I'm excited to be here. I'll be working with Director Downs a lot closer throughout the year, as well as you'll be seeing me more often here in the meeting. So I'm looking forward to that. So today, the item before you this evening for fiscal year 21-22 is the expenditure update report. Next slide. Okay. So through January 31st, 2022, for the current fiscal year 21-22, the city has identified Measure X spending of totaling $79 million. And we spent approximately 32.6. So the original estimate for this fiscal year 21-22 were at $65 million. But due to the pandemic, as well as the waiver decision for out-of-state online vendors to collect California sales tax, the city's sales tax consultant increased our Measure X estimates during the first quarter update meeting, December 21st, as well as during the mid-year update meeting, with additional information, it was raised to $79 million. So that's how we ended up with our total planned spend of $79 million. The largest categories spent to date include retaining firefighters, maintaining effective 911 response calls, as well as addressing the homelessness. So one of the things that I wanted to point out was the city, for at least for this fiscal year, will not be using CARES Act funding for costs related to safety, fire, and PD. You might recall that in prior fiscal year, the city did receive funding of around $28 million, and we did end up using part of that to fund some of our safety costs. But that grant ended, or that funding, so that won't be used this year. The city does intend to use a small amount of costs related to the Orange County Fire Authority for our new funding that the city received, which is the American Rescue Plan. But it's not expected to be substantial. We did provide a supplemental report that has additional details for each of these expenditure categories here. So we could go in further detail later in the presentation if you would like. Next slide. Okay. So during the first quarter update meeting, council was informed that after closing our 2021 books, the general fund balance had a balance of $109 million. which is around $42 million in excess of our 18% reserve policy, which Kat, our director Downs just discussed. So council approved one-time general fund appropriations of around $26 million, as well as approved recurring appropriations of 3.2. So the table below represents items that are added to the Measure X spending. Some of the major items added are the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center deferred maintenance. Some of the maintenance that's can be done is external updates such as exterior stucco, painting, and stuff like that, as well as doing some interior upgrades, including the restroom remodel and plumbing repairs. So that has been identified as a one-time funding. In addition, there's a couple items that were just recently added during the last council meeting. So due to the OC streetcar, OCT is working on OC streetcar that will connect Panana to Garden Grove. So due to the interruption of this, small businesses located in that immediate area, council approved the Santa Ana Business Interruption Fund program, which is intended to help small businesses up to $10,000 that were impacted directly from this. Another item closely related to that is the subsidy to support downtown business activities with free parking. So council and as well as the city staff recommended to provide free parking during normal work week. So that is Monday through Friday. And so we estimated lost revenue of around $790,000 for this fiscal year. There's additional items here such as city hall improvements. So that includes various different departments. Some of the stuff for that include industrial size air conditioning, for example, workstations, reorganize the workspace to become more efficient. Other recurring items, other items included here include such as enhancing the library services, traffic calming. One of the things that were added was memorials to life's loss, also due to COVID. So there's additional detail on the expenditure report that is provided that provides additional information if you want to refer to that. Next slide. Okay, so after updating our Measure X spending, the one-time expenditures are now at 21%. So most of these are from recently approved items from council. Their recurring expenditures of $79 million represents costs identified in previous fiscal years. So, this is a good trend, as committee members have emphasized that one-time costs are preferred than recurring costs, since Measure X will eventually sunset. Next slide. So this slide breaks down the planned expenditures by category of the total planned spend of $79 million. The major category is under unrestricted general revenue purpose. The planned spend may change as additional information is received from Measure X revenues and direction from council. These graphs or charts have been updated to the city website, so they're available for the public to view. So this concludes the presentation. We could go through the expenditure detail if you have any questions.
Excellent. Let's see. Let's go ahead and ask any questions that our group might have. So I'll start with Member Perea.
No questions at the moment.
And Member Lewis.
Hi, I just had a couple, and this might be in the expenditure report, so forgive me if it is. Where it says preserve service level 1819, that's $11.7 million. What is that for? Preserving what service levels?
You want me to go ahead and answer that, Alex?
That was slide one. My apologies.
Yeah. So when the fiscal year 18-19 budget was adopted in June or July of 2018, they didn't know if Measure X was going to pass yet, because that was on the November 2018 ballot.
Mhm.
And so they built a budget with an assumption that they were going to have to use, to maintain the service levels, they were going to have to use 10.2 million of the general fund balance,
Mhm.
basically spend down the savings account.
Okay, the reserve.
And they were also going to have to find some staff savings of 1.5 million to balance the budget. And that hadn't been detailed and made public yet, that plan of how to achieve the 1.5 million in savings. But in short answer, as you can probably imagine, it entailed layoffs.
Yes.
And so that was between those two items, the 10.2 and the 1.5, that's the 11.7. And so when Measure X was passed in November of 2018, basically it allowed the city to avoid that the decrease of service levels and the use of general fund balance by plugging that $11.7 million hole. So we keep that in there because that's a recurring item, and that's what that is.
Okay, great, thank you. And so my second question is on slide 2, there was a note for various partially restore frozen positions and other various. What are those two items? And they're at the bottom, I believe. I think.
Sure. Your question was on the 400,000 for various restored positions, correct?
Yes.
So yes. So part of that is so there's two positions for planning and building agency. So one of them is to hire an associate planner, as well as to hire a code enforcement associate, and one position for public works, which is assistant engineer. There is still some component that has not been determined what positions will be filled, but those are the ones that they've identified so far.
Okay, and were they frozen as a result of prior budget cuts? Is that okay? And then the other various line item?
So the various line items, they're actually included on the detail, but just for simplicity, I made it really simple. So some of the items that were added for the various, for example, include Public Works was going to purchase a mini sweeper for protected bike lanes. So that's 150,000. That's under the one-time cost. Also, there's office space improvements for 100,000, as well as there's a pilot graffiti art program that's 50,000. So all those are under one-time cost.
Okay.
For the recurring, it's mostly hiring a staff, for example, one full-time city staff attorney, as well as, for example, for city council, hiring a records manager. And there's also costs related to special events for the city.
Thank you. Those were my questions. Thank you for the report.
All right, perfect. How about Vice Chair Landaverde?
I don't have any questions at this time. Just thanks, Alex. You did a great job for your first time, presenting with us. So, welcome to Measure X. Thank you for the pie charts. I think those are very helpful. All the colors. I think we love all seeing pictures. Sometimes it's just words and numbers and everybody's like, what's kind of going on here? So appreciate that.
Thank you for the feedback. I know accountants, they like numbers. We like spreadsheets, but I think you have to remember that the public, I think it's easier presented in a chart format. It's easier to read and just understand it. So that was the intent. So thank you.
Definitely, of course. Thanks.
Well, as a fellow accountant, I think we try to fit as many numbers possible on our Excel sheet. So yeah, so it's good to keep in mind your audience for sure. Thanks for the presentation for sure. I have a question, and you had highlighted it in your presentation, but with the streetcar things that we're kind of seeing in downtown, and specifically with the free parking, because that's our own parking. So is this because we're shifting from, we have a parking, like a dedicated parking fund that we have to pull from the general fund? Like, are we paying left pocket into right pocket, but we got to keep that parking fund?
So basically the parking enterprise that we have, which is separate from the general fund, it has the revenue streams from all the parking garages and the parking meters in the downtown area. The expenditures for that fund are to basically operate those garages and service the meters and provide a clean and safe contribution to downtown, and also provide contributions to the business groups down there. We also do things like string up holiday lights to make it more festive during the holiday shopping season. There's quite a number of things that parking enterprise does with that parking revenue. Well, when you offer free parking and you decrease the parking revenue, if you want to continue providing those services downtown, then that means that the general fund has to backfill. And so that's what we're looking at with the 789,000 is the general fund backfilling for the free parking where we're not collecting as much revenue as what we normally would.
Okay. And just in general terms, is that, I mean, I know that's just during the day instead of the evening, is if what would it look like if it was also in the evening? I mean, is it like double that amount? Is it the same amount? Is it like, do you have just a guesstimate?
It wouldn't be double, just simply because we do have some monthly parkers in downtown that contribute to the revenue, people who work at the local businesses. So I don't think it would be quite double. If I had to guess it, I don't know, maybe another 50% or something.
Okay.
But that's, don't quote me on
Yeah.
that. I'm just trying to make the point that it's not double.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And with the business interruption program, the 1.5, Alex, that you mentioned, is that the 1.5 that was just voted on? I think it was on last Tuesday. Okay, so this is really hot off. So you've updated through this most recent stuff. And if that were to, increase, I know there's discussion about 3. Would we essentially be just making that 1.5, just making it a 3.0? I mean, is that where that would
possible?
go?
That's possible. Another option for the city council to consider, and I really don't know what's going to be proposed at this point in time, but you might remember that we have a spending plan called Revive Santa Ana that primarily uses our American Rescue Plan Act allocation from the federal government. There are a lot of projects on there that require some lead time and resources, and we're just not going to be able to get to all of the spending in certain number of months, if you will. So it's possible that there could be a little bit of shuffling around and maybe using second tranche dollars, the second 64 million that we have not received yet, using those dollars to fund some of the programs that appear on the list right now for programs that are just simply not ready to go right now. So that's a possibility, or it's a possibility of using some of that 20 million excess general fund reserve.
Okay. What like, I mean, how were those discussions had with this original 1.5, Kat? Or was it just, hey, we got to go act so fast that we just got to go? I mean, obviously that's not what they said, but
yeah, I think it's probably closer to the latter, but yeah.
All right, fair enough. And is this did we do anything for the businesses on the South Main Street? The big projects that are going, for fairly lengthy project. I know that, I mean, I see the art type thing, but that's not, the focus to the businesses that have been interrupted there. Was there anything done on the city side to be able to help those businesses?
Well, originally we had allocated, I think it was 2.5 million to the South Main corridor. And I think that 1 million of that was public art and 1.5 million was for business assistance. That 1.5 was shifted over to the downtown group. Okay. So as it stands right now, the only thing that is still on the books for the South Main corridor is the public art. So I anticipate you've got that exactly correct. I anticipate that there will probably be some addition to the budget to help out South Main corridor as well.
Okay.
So I wanted to add something to that. So sorry, the South Main corridor initial funding for that was around 2 million. I know we shifted 1.5 to the Santa Ana Business Interruption Program. So we do have 500,000 for the South Main corridor. For the arts, I think we do have $1 million.
Okay, thanks.
So that's already been budgeted for, or like, I mean,
Yeah,
that program
so-
is already in existence?
So that with the first quarter report that was approved by City Council on January 18th, that's where the original South Main corridor allocation was made. And it was appropriated on January 18th. Then on March 1st, was it March 1st? Yes, on March
Yeah.
1st, some of that money, 1.5 million, got shifted over to the downtown businesses. So that appropriation was changed via City Council action on March 1st.
So, but if I'm a business owner on South Main Street, am I getting anything? Or like, am I getting any business interruption money?
Not necessarily. I think Alex indicated that there's still $500,000 on the books for them. But I know that there was multiple programs being envisioned. One was not business interruption. I believe that there was restaurant incubation envisioned, and maybe potential seed money for storefronts. I'm not sure. But I'm not sure, I don't know that business interruption or business assistance in that nature was ever a part of that original recommendation that was approved on January 18th.
Yeah, I see the 500,000 of the restaurant incubation in Alex's slide deck here. But okay. All right, interesting. And then just, I want to make sure I'm, and I think I answered my own question by looking at the, the Excel sheet, the small numbers and letters, but we have two major categories on the pie chart, on the 79 million. There's two categories that are, in alignment with the retaining police officers, which is 5%, and then maintaining effective 911 response, which, they kind of sound very similar. But and I think I just want to make sure that I have this right, that essentially the retaining police officers, the 396, that was more for essentially the increase, existing contracts increase to that contract, as opposed to the maintaining effective 911. That's where like additional officers came on board, and as well as parks programs and other items that are kind of in that bucket. Do I have the big picture right on that?
Yes, you do.
All right, awesome. Okay, perfect. Does anyone else have any questions that arose? Just go ahead and wave your hand. All right, very good. So that completes both of those items, and we are, let's see, let me find where I'm at here. Sorry. Okay, let's see. So our next item is our annual report, if I have that right, which is item number 5 on the calendar or on the agenda. Oh, goodness. Of which I think we have. I know in my script I have the staff. Are you going to give an overview on this? Kat, are you going to give an overview on this process, or just give it over to us?
Sure. I can just give you a quick overview, since we do have a couple members of the public joining us this evening. So each year, as part of the committee's job duties, as it were, is to either prepare a report to City Council, which can just simply be a list of recommendations. So this committee is gone through kind of a learning curve and a first couple years of service. And in the first year, there was a very lengthy report that went to City Council. And last year, I think that it was the committee shifted gears and went with a list of recommendations for City Council as their annual report. So what we did for the agenda packet was we provided the list of recommendations that went to the City Council last year. It was presented to them on May 4th. And so the committee can either use this as a starting point and modify it, or do something completely different. So this is all your show and your purview, and you decide what you want to report to the City Council and how you want to do that, and we will facilitate delivering it.
Okay, and we what's the time frame on delivering this, Kat?
Same kind of May timeframe. And so the idea is to formulate your content tonight, as we've done in the past. The committee certainly can say, okay, this is what we want to say. And then we give our chair or we give staff the flexibility to correct grammatical sentences or whatever else, or make it pretty to go to the city council. You know, kind of like put the polish on it, if you will, and that you can certainly do that again. Or as an alternative, the committee could decide, if it wanted to call another meeting to continue working on its annual report so that we can get it delivered to the city council in May during their budget workshops.
Okay, excellent. I appreciate that. So, we have a requirement to do this. We have a time frame that we need to kind of get it done. It's going to be before our next regular recurring meeting, and so we have some action to do on this, which it's 7:50. So I'm sorry that I've asked so many questions, but I think it was important stuff this evening. So my instead of asking for opinions first, I'm going to just give you my opinion, of which, I think last time we did an ad hoc, of which then, kind of based on the kind of big picture framework, if I recall correctly. Although, I might be confusing years now, but my suggestion might be to give big picture opinions on changes to this. I think this is a good framework. I think what we did the first year was just way too detailed, and our goal is to be able to provide information to the public as well as to the council. And so I would suggest that we would use this as our framework, and maybe convene a 2 or 3 person ad hoc, which I believe would be allowed, and then everyone kind of give thoughts this evening in public on any changes or big picture changes that they might want to have.
Chair Johnson, would you like me to put the prior year recommendations up on the screen for discussion while you guys are having your discussion, or no?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it on mine, so I'm thinking everyone has it up. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. So this is what we're referring to.
Tim, this is Kristen.
Yep.
I just wanted to say that we do have a couple of committee members or outside visitors on, and we do not have another option for public comment. So I didn't know if you wanted to do that before, if you wanted to wait till the end and add that in.
That's a good, thank you for that reminder. So, just in general, just as a preface, we normally, we passed our public comment period, but I'm a believer of a lot, folks that are, especially, I could probably see who's all, how many people are on, but yeah, we definitely have some folks on that, if you have something you want to say, I want to be able to make sure you can say it to this group. So yes, let's take this time right now to go ahead and allow folks to speak if they have something to say. So is that Kristen, do you know if they want, or do we just does everyone unmute themselves, or how do we go about that?
They can unmute themselves or raise their hand, and I do not see anybody requesting to do that at this time.
All right. Well, that if you see someone raise their hand because maybe they're, I'm not sure how to do that, please please interrupt us, Kristen, if you would.
Okay.
Kindly do that. So, but so what I want to hear folks' thoughts on kind of what I laid out of a possibility on it. And so, Member Lewis, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like that approach. Just providing comments tonight and maybe an ad hoc committee. Refining it and submitting it to the staff.
Okay. What about Member Perea?
I agree as well. That last year it worked very well, so it's good to keep it simple.
Okay, and Vice Chair Landaverde.
Yeah, I think this is good. I think we could work off of this and see, obviously, like if something already was done, then, I mean, maybe we could take it off of this list, or if like we want to add on it, like what worked, what didn't work. I don't know if when you guys were referring to that ad hoc committee, are you guys talking about a separate meeting after this, or?
Yeah, so we can have a 3-person like a subcommittee, or I think technically called an ad hoc, and to where we can meet, the 3 of us, and come back and submit the recommendation. We can finalize up the recommendation and for presentation to the council without calling a special meeting of the entire committee, is essentially what it is.
Got it.
And correct me if I'm wrong with any of that jargon, Director Downs. But seeing none, I think I'm.
You're fine.
Yeah. Okay.
My only concern with that, because I don't know if you guys remember from last year, this is just my like busy season for work, so I wouldn't be able to attend that. I mean, if we want to discuss this right now, we can. If not, then, or discuss a little bit now, and then you guys can go about the meeting. I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not, but let me know what you guys think.
So I'm hearing you say that, hey, between now and when we probably need to present this, you're kind of you're not going to be able to be part of the ad hoc committee then. Okay.
Yeah.
What about Member Lewis and Member Perea? Obviously, we have a couple of people that aren't here, so I'm not sure if I would want to necessarily volunteer them unless we had to. But what about the two of you? Or is that something that you would be open to doing?
I'm traveling a lot the next couple of months. Do you know what the time commitment might be?
I would think that we would probably be looking at 1, maybe 2 1-hour meetings.
Okay. If my travel schedule allows, I could probably do it. But if there's someone else on the committee that would be able to serve unfettered, then I would defer to them.
And what about Member Perea? What's your time availability?
I'm happy to join the ad hoc. Definitely want to make sure that if there's other members that are not present here today, that they have the opportunity. But I'm always here.
So I mean, we are our absentee members are let's see, Alonso Lugo, Cargosian, and Hernandez. I'm not familiar with their schedules at all. However, I know that Lugo is probably our longest running. He's been here from the start, and he's usually relatively available. I don't know if it's something we can volunteer him for or not, but being respectful of Nancy, your concerns with that, is that something we can volunteer him for, and or not?
I second that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we're familiar with Member Lugo, and I'm sure that he would be happy to serve. You could probably volunteer him. The other thing is, you might just want to take a few minutes tonight and just get some general direction from the rest of the committee, so that the ad hoc has, kind of an idea of where they're heading with this. That might be a good way to go.
Yeah, I definitely want, before we're done, I want to hear what I can express my comments at the ad hoc, but for Nancy and for Abby, knowing what your comments would be is crucial, I think, before we end the meeting tonight. And the only other thing is that I'm making the assumption that I'm going to be on there, which I don't have to be on there, and especially we have looking at we have three guys on the committee, and I'm always sensitive that whenever we have that, that may not be always the best thing. So I am more than happy to provide my comments and allow Member Perea to work with maybe Alonso and Ms. Cargosian also, or we could have Cargosian instead of, if both Carlos and myself are on it, have her on it too.
Yeah, maybe we can extend that to both of them, see who's available. I definitely think Tim, you're an asset to this, just with your background and everything, you know, having you on there, I think everyone else could agree. So depending on what everyone says, but I would extend it because I think member Cargosian was with, did she join with you last year? Is she the one that was kind of teamed up with you? I don't remember if it was her. or it was
I
someone
think
else.
she was on, she very well may have been on that group last year.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Also, well, my gut tells me that administratively, we're probably not able to maybe say, oh, either or.
Yeah.
I think, Chair, I think you probably have the purview to go
Okay.
ahead and select your ad hoc committee. Just make sure that it's no more than 3, and you know, for Brown Act purposes. And I think you're good to go. So you have the purview to be able to do that.
Okay, well, what I think what I would like to do is for Carlos, myself, and first shot with Ms. I forget Cargosian's first name, but Ms. Cargosian would be and if she's unable to do it, then to go to Alonso and then to Mr. Hernandez would be my plan. Okay, so let's I'm interested especially in Nancy and your thoughts on this document, so that way when we're meeting, we're able to well, we probably have to have a vote for that sub ad hoc. Is that right? No. Okay, perfect. Then let's just go for it. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. I love the forum, and I think it's, you know, keeping it simple is great. I think the plan for moving to one-time expenditures and recurring costs should remain. That should always be our goal. And then if there are other, and I don't have anything specific to add, but if the ad hoc committee or, you know, or Abby, if you have other areas of focus, such as what was laid out for the police, the community policing and things of that nature, I think those are very important that are within the Measure X charge. Those are very important to include. I don't have anything specific myself, but I'm in favor of those types of initiatives being included in that type of proposal. So that's all I have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree. I think, I don't know if right now it's obviously a very broad, and I think I don't know if we need to just keep it that way, or I don't know if there's something that someone might, like, I don't know if Tim or anyone else thinks like, hey, we need to, this is one like a sub point, we need to just stick to, like, I don't know, for example, like it was one of them, I think it was like the street lights or whatever, right? Like, I don't know if we need to specifically say it on there, but obviously we're open to that. And then did you guys see anything different, or do you guys feel like anything different from everything that we put here? Do you feel that was everything touched? Was something missed? Can we be more specific? Maybe that's something that, you know, I don't know if the city was just kind of like, the council was like, yeah, okay, you know, they weren't specific. And I don't know, just things like that. If you guys follow my lead, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but kind of.
I mean, to kind of piggyback on that, and I know I said I wasn't going to like ramble on what my thoughts were, but yeah, I mean, I think that like number 2 on the pilot programs, especially after hearing what, you know, we heard from the police tonight, in terms of, hey, it feels like they think that, you know, having alternative resources for response to some of these non-urgent type things is important and helpful for them. And so I think that's great. I'm concerned about, you know, my questions on the South Main versus 4th Street, the downtown area, on that like 2B on here, like the economic development. I don't think we should get in a situation to where it's just the folks that, you know, if you can rally everyone to come to council, which, you know, I'm not opposed at all to what happened there, but we need to be able to actually seed the economic development and not wait for folks to say, hey, this is a major problem and be reactionary to that, but actually seed the community on some of these issues. And so I don't know if that's where you're going, Abby, with, you know, on some of that's what I was thinking when you were saying it, but I don't.
Right. No, yeah, you followed my lead. That's exactly what I was going for.
Okay.
Can you guys let me know if my internet's like lagging, just because
No,
it
you're
keeps
good.
telling me on my end, but okay, just want to make sure. just stop me if I'm stumbling over here.
Yeah, no,
But
you're good.
yeah, that was where I was kind of headed towards. Yeah.
What, and I kind of alluded to one item that I wouldn't mind, since it is kind of a new thing that I'm going to say, is this idea of having some that reserve, the excess over the general, being able to have that part of the transition plan on the wind down, on the sunset. And so, I mean, in my mind, I would love that to be part of the, especially since, I mean, you can do that 6 years out, 7 years out. Really, really hard to do it 1 year out. Okay. And so what we're doing right now in anticipation of that sunset of it, even the first sunset, is, I think, like really important, because if we don't do it now, that turn is, as Director Downs said, the turning of the jumbo airplane or the aircraft carrier, whatever the analogy was, we're in the spots where we can make a 2-degree change, and you're going to go in a complete, a real different direction. Whereas a 2-degree change, 1 year out, doesn't do anything.
Right.
So, I mean, I would like for us to recommend at least there be some consideration of, hey, this is non-touch money. This is really money for that anticipation of these decreased service levels. Because I tell you what, when we have to lay off 30 police officers, that ain't gonna go well.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, it's like, at the end of the day, I know that they're just recommendations, but I think at least they'll know the concerns that we have, and the rest of the city has, so I think that's something great, a great point to add on there.
Louis, are you kind of, I'm seeing you nod your head, so I'm assuming that's an affirmative. Okay.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
Tim, it's Kristen again.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to refer to what Alfonso Lugo had sent in. He had just made a comment about it, and I didn't know if you wanted to share it or not.
Yeah, let me find it here. I think that was right before our meeting. Let's see, I'm sorry.
I'm going to send it to you right now. I just sent it to you.
Oh my goodness, it just shows how many emails I get. Oh man, alive. Gotten way too many just since I've been on here. See, now I'm seeing unread emails that I'm getting intrigued on that I got to stop looking at. My goodness.
You should have just got one. I can read it if you want.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and read it? I'm not, for some reason, I'm not. It's not coming through.
He just stated regarding agenda.
It's the 4th Street. It's the construction that's just delayed it. So go ahead.
Regarding agenda item number 4, I fully support and approve the continuation of the proposed Measure X Oversight Committee recommendations for fiscal year 21-22 presented to the City Council May 4th, 2021. A continued focus of one-time spending, item 1, improvements to our public space that are tangible, item 4, and reduction of expenses, items 3 and 5, will secure the future of our city as a solid bedrock for generations.
Okay, perfect. All right, Carlos, do you want to add anything to the? I mean, you're going to be part of the sub here, but do you want to add anything?
It's more a question on point 7 of the recommendations we did from last year, and I know Director Downs mentioned, I believe something like last year, that the cities are moving towards having some type of dedicated accounts or categorize better the Measure X revenues and expenditures. So I'm wondering if that's something that we should still keep there, or if that's something that requires council action.
It feels to me like I know that Kit Kat will respond, but it feels to me like I was thinking we would X that one off, because I feel like we've done that.
Yeah, we have done that. It's administrative. It does not require council action. Yeah, so we're on it. We've done a lot of it. We will continue to do it.
Awesome. And that's just my only comment for now, and then I'll provide more input.
All right, excellent. And so administratively, Kristen, do we, how do we, you'll have to refresh my memory. Like, am I able to contact directly? Do I go through you to, what's our protocol here?
Kat, you want to, I believe that you can do it directly, but
Yeah,
do you want to
yeah,
take that, Kat?
you can contact them directly.
For
and-
scheduling and all that type of stuff?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Again, as long as you don't have a quorum, as long as you're 3 or less, you're good to go.
Okay, so that also means that we need to be cognizant of that we are not able to speak with, just as a reminder of our training, not to speak with someone outside of our the subcommittee about it, and watch social media type stuff about it, that someone, if there's multiple people on that, just be cognizant of those of those inadvertent type things that might happen. So
Great memory. That would constitute a serial meeting. So if, for example, Chair Johnson, Member Perea, and Member Cargosian are the subcommittee, then Member Cargosian should not go and have a separate conversation with Vice Chair Landaverde or Member Lewis. So
right.
good reminder. Thank you.
As much for myself as anyone else. So, but, okay. Let's see. I think that, so as long as we're in agreement with that, I think that brings us to the end of that item also, of which we will, so we'll go ahead and prepare that as an ad hoc, and then submit it to Kat and her group to present to the get it on the appropriate council meeting. And let's see, that's the end of our business calendar, and seeing that no one has their hands up.
I'm sorry, Tim, I do. It's Kristen.
Okay, go ahead.
Did we need any type of motion on that to allow that to be presented, to make the changes by staff, the grant, making it pretty?
I think it would be a good idea for the committee to entertain a motion to go ahead and allow the subcommittee to take these comments, to go ahead and draft a set of recommendations for the city council, and to allow staff to make any kind of formatting or spelling or grammatical changes as needed. Obviously no content changes, just like, adding a period or formatting or whatever else. I think it'd be a good idea to have that motion.
Okay, can I have someone make that motion?
So moved.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Member Lewis.
And I'll
Go ahead.
second.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Landaverde. So go ahead and call the roll, Kristen.
Let's see
No,
here.
call the
Member
vote.
Lewis,
Aye.
Member Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Landaverde,
Aye.
Chair Johnson,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that, Director Downs. And so I think that concludes our business calendar. And staff, do we have maybe any additional comments to make this evening for us?
I don't. Thank you for a great meeting as always. I'm so glad that you guys are so engaged and you care about the city and you care about Measure X, and I certainly appreciate that.
All right, perfect. Anyone else? All right, excellent. So let's and then how about any final comments from our members? I'll start with Member Perea.
None, thank you.
All right, excellent. And Member Lewis?
No comments. Thank you.
All right, you're up, Vice Chair.
No, just an overall thank you again. Obviously for the city or staff for working hard. I know that sometimes we have some requests that could be a little bit out there, but thank you guys for, being patient with us. Thank you for getting the police department on here so we can, they give us that update. And yeah, thank you guys overall.
Yeah, perfect. And I reiterate that. And I would encourage our everyone that might be listening tonight or later to, when Director Downs has her mid-season update or mid-year updates and those types of things, tune in, because this is all interrelated, and kudos to you and your entire group there, Director Downs. I know you don't do it all yourself, but your entire group there for putting all this stuff together. And as you go into budget season, which it probably never feels like it ends for you, but really appreciate you, the fiscal stewardship that you bring to your work, and providing to the public as well as council. So thank you very much. And Alex, appreciate you coming on board, and welcome to the group. Great job. So, and I think that is it, unless we have any other final hand movements. Kristen, I just saw you unmute yourself. So
We do not. I just wanted to remind you about the next meeting is June 8th. So when you close.
excellent. So thank you. So hearing no objection to adjourning this meeting, let's go ahead and adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on June 8th at 6 o'clock. And one point of clarification, do we know yet if we're allowed to continue doing Zoom meetings at that point, or is it kind of a month-to-month thing?
I believe it's a month-to-month thing.
Okay. All right, excellent. That's that. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.